Hello everyone, I hope you guys are all doing well. It's that time of month again, and we are back with another Abyss guide. Hoyoverse has been strangely kind to us for 2 months in a row now, as similar to the last Abyss, this one is quite flexible. That being said, there are some new and unfamiliar mechanics present that could trip up some of you guys, so hopefully with this guide, you can find a strong solve for your account. If you're new here, welcome in. These guides cover all relevant enemy data and effective strategies and archetypes that you can apply to your exact situation. We cover each chamber individually, and then at the end, we'll go over overall strategies and plans. If this guide helps you, don't forget to leave a like on the video, let me know in the comments, and share it with your friends that might need help too. If you think I left out any important info, let me know in the comments, and I will pin any important info that wasn't covered in the video. But without further ado, let's jump right into it with the Blessing of Abyssal Moon and Leyline disorders. The Blessing of Abyssal Moon for this month triggers a strike of true damage for every 3 skill hits. There's an internal cooldown of 0.9 seconds on this, so sometimes it'll take more than 3 skill hits if the hits land in quick succession. As you'll see momentarily, this buff goes hand in hand with the Leyline disorders for this month, so if you're able to trigger one of those, this buff will slightly amplify it, and if you can't, it's kinda just whatever. It'll be there if you use characters that can trigger it easily, like Farina, but it's not really worth building your whole team around it as usual. Moving on to our first half Leyline disorder, we have a repeat of last month's 75% cryo skill damage bonus. And just like last month, the only character that can do literally anything with this is Escoffier. Or in other words, no Escoffier, no buff. If you do have her, this is obviously going to be the favorite side to use her on, especially when we start looking at the enemies. Our second half buff is a 75% Dendro skill damage bonus. Kanich and Emily are the main focus here, but Nahida also gets a minor boost from this. You'll see shortly that all 3 of the second half chambers are quite weak to burning, so Kanich and Emily will naturally be good there, which is even further reinforced by this buff. But yeah, that's all there really is to comment on these buffs. They're pretty hyper-specific and fit in well with the already strong picks, so unless you have one of the characters they want you to have, you can pretty much ignore it. But yeah, let's move right along with our chamber information. Starting things off, we have an Eremite Stone Enchanter with 850,000 HP, followed by 2 veteran Wind Operative Local Legends with 2.1 million HP each. The Eremite is a fairly generic enemy who starts off the fight by summoning a crocodile. Killing the crocodile stuns the Eremite, deals a little over the third of his health as true damage, and shreds Geo-Res to negative 50%. Even if you are not using Geo here, you should still focus down the crocodile for the free stun window and heavy chunk of damage. Other than that, his HP and base resists are quite low, and he has no major attacks to worry about. The main enemies of this chamber are the local legends. They have 50% Animo Res, which is 40% higher than all others, and while 50% is not insanely high, you should avoid using an Animo DPS as they will generally clear slower than other elements at the same investment level. She has 2 main attacks to watch out for. The first begins when she cuts her own HP by a small amount, and it is indicated by a red effect around her. She will then fire off a shot, and anyone hit by it will receive a Bond of Life and Corrosion dot that lasts until the Bond of Life is cleansed. There are a few ways to deal with this. Firstly, you can just dodge it. Secondly, you can bring a healer to heal off the Bond of Life, but shields do not work against this. Even if the full damage of the attack is blocked, you will still get the Bond of Life applied to you. Finally, you can intentionally get hit and use the Bond of Life and dot to your advantage for Farina, Arlecchino, or Clarentius. Her other attack to worry about triggers when you walk too close to her when she is firing her ranged attack. She will instantly stop firing and put up a shield on her front half. If you hit it, the shield blocks the attack and she will jump above you and counterattack. Being close range is natural for most teams, and walking behind her to hit her is unintuitive, so it's pretty much unavoidable that you hit the shield. The punishment isn't really anything to worry about, just be mindful that you do not use a large hit on the shield like a Navia Shotgun Blast. As for team building here, you'll see shortly that your second half will be the focal point of your resources, so you really should just bring any strong single/double target team here. You know, I really don't want to say it, but all of these enemies do have negative 20% physical resistance, so if you have a good physical team, this is probably the only time you will ever be able to make it work. The second half here discourages the use of Hydro or Cryo, and all of these enemies are freezable, so a freeze team with Escoffier and Farina is optimal if you have them. Your optimal choice will be clearer once we cover the second half and you see what units you have left over, so just bear with me for now. Speaking of the second half, we have a Lava Dragon statue with 4.6 million HP. This enemy has 3 forms dictated by a Fury meter: Geo-Human, Molten Dragon, and Overburn. The boss will always start the fight in Geo-Human form with an empty Fury meter. In the Geo-Human form, it has 150% all res. Dealing pyro damage will slowly build up the meter, filling up more if the attack actually applies pyro. Notice how I only said dealing pyro damage and not applying pyro? The Fury meter does not take into account internal cooldown, so things like Chevreuse Burst or Klee skill that do a lot of hits in a small amount of time are going to burst the meter really heavily and are super valuable here. Once the meter fills, it enters Molten Dragon form and the Fury meter is set to 20%. In Molten Dragon form, all resists except Pyro are reduced to 45%, with Pyro remaining at 150. The Fury meter in this form has slightly different properties. It still fills up by taking Pyro damage, but it is half as quick to fill up. On top of this, any Hydro or Cryo attacks reduce Fury by 20%. So essentially, if you hit it with Hydro or Cryo immediately upon entering Molten Dragon, it will instantly revert back to Geohuman. Even with some Pyro hits, you can't build up the meter nearly fast enough to counter the reduction from Hydro and Cryo, so this pretty much entirely rules out using Hydro or Cryo here, sort of. More on that in a minute though. When the Fury meter in Molten Dragon form reaches 50% and 100%, the boss will take 15% of its current HP as true damage, which is just a nice little bit of bonus damage. The main reason for filling up the meter in Molten Dragon form is that, when it fills, the boss enters Overburn form, where it is stunned and all res, including Pyro this time, are set to 10%. This is your main window to pump DPS on this enemy. Once this time's out, the boss resets to a Geohuman form and restarts the cycle. So I mentioned earlier that using Cryo or Hydro is only kinda ruled out. In the standard sense, yes, they are both unusable, but with some slightly unconventional play, you can still use them against this boss. Essentially, you need to spend the majority of the fight with them on standby, not using any skills or bursts. Focus entirely on simply filling the rage meter with your other members. Once it is stunned, there's no punishment for using Cryo or Hydro, so you can use this chance to pump your damage with the full party. Generally, Voveno will be the best option to play like this with, as her damage buffs can make it viable even with such a short window to do any damage. But you are pretty much forced to play Burning to build the Fury meter fast enough to make this work, so it will likely force you to play weird, unorthodox teams, and the way it plays is already clunky as is, so if you have access to solid teams without Cryo or Hydro, I would generally recommend sticking with those and using your good Cryo or Hydro on the first half. As I mentioned earlier, Cryo and Hydro are both pretty good on the first half already, so it just makes more sense to play it that way anyways. The intended focus for this fight, if you play normally, is Burning, Overload, or Mono Pyro. You can also get away with some other weird stuff like an Anemo or Geo DPS as long as you don't build a Hydro or Cryo, and you bring a good source of off-field application to build the meter. But for the sake of the guide, we will just be covering the main three archetypes. Overload with an Electro DPS and Burning with a Dendro DPS will generally be the best here, as they can utilize the res reduction from Molten Dragon form while still consistently building the meter. Mono Pyro, Burning with the Pyro DPS, and Overload with the Pyro DPS are also very good. The only downside is that they do not benefit from the res reduction in Molten Dragon form, as the Pyro res is not changed. Even with this though, the ability to quickly build the meter is extremely valuable, as you get 2 solid chunks of true damage and a big stun window with low resist on the boss, so these teams are perfectly viable. This boss really does just boil down to speedrun Overburn mode and pump all your DPS while it's vulnerable. So any reasonable team that can do this will function just fine as well. You might just have to do a little bit of experimenting to find the perfect one for you. Starting off Chamber 2, we have 2 Recon Log mechs with 300,000 HP each, followed by 2 Geological Survey mechs with 380,000 HP, followed by a Perpetual Mechanical Array with 3 million HP. For the first 2 waves, 300,000 HP in a 2025 Abyss isn't even really worth a second thought, so let's just talk about the Perpetual Mechanical Array. It has 70% physical res versus 10% all other res, so unfortunately your physical clear dreams end here. The main mechanic of this boss triggers when it's below 35% HP, and it cannot be damaged below 30% HP until the mechanic has fully played out once. The boss will move to the middle of the arena, become invincible, and spawn 4 ads. The one with the yellow circle around it needs to be killed, and when this is successfully done, the main boss is stunned and all res is reduced by 50%. This should be more than enough to kill it during this window, as with a strong team, it should be at 30% HP when this mechanic happens, leaving you just a small amount of HP to break through with the reduced res on top of that. Beyond this, the only slightly problematic attack is when it turns into a rocket and flies away to crash back down on you. You can't hit it while it's in the sky, so just be mindful not to use any important cooldowns during its invulnerability window. As expected of a 2.0 boss, this fight is quite simple, and no one reaction really stands above the others here, and once again, your main focus for your resources will be on the second half. So you should look to use your best single target team from your leftover units for this half. You're probably starting to see a bit of a theme here with this. Following that, we have 2 Tenebrous Mimesses, the first wave having 850,000 HP, and the second having 925,000 HP. The main gimmick of these enemies is the Abyss shields, but thankfully they are not nearly as annoying to deal with as they were when they were last in the Abyss, as we have many more options now. If you don't know, they will start the battle shielded. These shields lose HP when they take damage. Wait, I just realized how stupid that sounds. Any instance of elemental damage reduces the shield by a flat amount, with Night Soul reducing by 3 times as much. This does not take into account any sort of internal cooldown or elemental application, so the faster you can tick the damage on the shield, the faster it breaks. For this reason, transformative reactions are best for breaking these shields. This is because these reactions do a separate instance of damage upon being triggered, rather than multiplying the damage of the attack. Burning is by far the best at dealing with this shield, as the super quick ticks of damage is exactly what you're looking for. You can also choose not to play around transformative reactions, and just use Natlan characters. Well, not all Natlan characters. Slower hitting stuff like Mualani and Silali still break the shield quite slowly even with the Natlan buff. But characters like Auron, Chaska, Aoife, Kinich, etc. will all do great. But what if, even in 4.6, you don't own a single Natlan character? Well, don't worry, because the Pyro Traveler is actually a menace against these shields. They can literally solo the shield with no help, and they're completely free on top of that. If you stack Burning with that, the shields do not stand a chance in the slightest. Once you get through the shield, they are nothing more than a regular enemy. Though do be careful of the attacks that play a little extra visual effect before them, as being hit by them will cause a % max HP damage to the active character after a short delay, and can easily cause you to get one shot. But yeah, your goal here should just be making a team that can make quick work of the Abyss shields. So reasonably fast Night Soul damage, transformative reactions, or just a combination of both. Starting off the final chamber, we have a Ruin Grader with 1.2 million HP, followed by a Thundering Wild Manifestation with 1.4 million HP. Not much to say in regards to the Ruin Grader, pretty simple enemy that most of y'all should be quite familiar with. The Wyab though does have some unique mechanics. I complained last month that they keep putting him in Abyss, and I was tired of explaining what he does every single month, but I guess this is just what I'm doomed to do every month now. Well, here we go again. Shortly after spawning, it will put up an Elementalist shield and drain the energy of the whole party for the duration of the shield. The shield is broken simply by dealing damage, with Night Soul damage being more effective. After a while of having the shield up, if it is not broken in time, it converts the remaining shield to an Electro shield that is broken through reactions. Breaking the shield while it is in Elementalist form will stun the enemy and give a massive amount of energy to your party. Breaking it while it is an Electro will stun the enemy but not refund energy. Because of this, you should not let your shield make it to the Electro state, because your bursts will get all messed up. The typical strategy for tackling this enemy is to make sure you have all your bursts up before it spawns. Then, during the window between it spawning and putting up the shield, press all your bursts. This way they are active even during the energy drain period. You can use bursts to break the shield, and then use the energy refund from breaking the shield to cleanly transition into your next rotation. Alternatively, you can delay it from putting up a shield by freezing it before it puts up the shield, or you can prevent it from shielding altogether with a perfectly timed stagger. The stagger is pretty hard to consistently pull off though, so I would advise against relying solely on it. Freeze though is a different story. If you pulled a Scoffier, she can use the Leyline Distorter from this half already to get a damage bonus. With a strong freeze team, you can lock the Wyab down with freeze and kill it before it even gets a chance to put up a shield. If you don't have access to this though, the classic method works as well as it always has. And don't worry about Night Soul being stronger against the shield. It's a fairly weak shield and should break easily without any Night Soul, as long as you can get your bursts up. The Night Soul can just be treated as an extra bonus if you already are slotting it in the team here. Speaking of the team, I'm sure you saw this coming, but once again the main restrictions come from the second half. So your first half team should just be a team with good single target damage that is made up of leftovers after you build the second half team. Electro DPS are slightly behind here, as the Wyab has 40% more Electro res than other resists, but it's really not the end of the world. The only team that's notably stronger than others here is the Escoffier Freeze team for the reasons previously mentioned. Closing things out with Chamber 3's second half, we have the Tenebris Papilla with 3.3 million HP. Similarly to the previous second half, this guy is not nearly as threatening as he used to be, simply because we have way more options now. He begins with 70% all res, and his first attack will set up a Void Shield. The same Void Shield as the one from the Chamber 2 second half. I won't cover how to break the shield again because it would be kind of redundant, so if you skip that section or somehow forgot already, just go back and watch it to learn how to deal with the shield. Once you break the shield, the boss is stunned, and its resists are set to 0% for the duration of the stun. Once the stun wears off, its resists move up to 35% until you can stun it again. Honestly, there's not much to add beyond break the shield, kill the boss. Just like the Mimiflora, the main hurdle is breaking the shield. In this case, you can choose to ignore the shield, as there are safe spots at the very edge of the arena, but you do not get the res reduction when you do this, so it means you have to brute force through 3.3 million HP with 70% res. Honestly, now that I'm saying it out loud, it's not nearly as bad as some of the enemies we've been getting lately, but it's still not optimal, so it's generally recommended to just engage with the mechanic and break the shield. Also, just like the Mimiflora, when it does the little effect before one of its attacks, it will apply that same max HP delay damage debuff to you, and this is even more threatening than the Mimiflora one, and it can pretty easily one-shot you, so be mindful of those attacks. Team building here is also the exact same as Chamber 2 second half, but as a quick refresher, transformative reactions, Night Soul damage, or a combination of both to make quick work of this boss. As always, the best strategy for getting 9 stars is to hard focus on one chamber at a time with your team building. Get 3 stars there, reset, and repeat for the next chamber. But regardless, let's talk some overall tips for the Abyss as a whole. Since the second half is infinitely more restrictive, we'll start by covering it. In general, Hydro and Cryo are no-go here, as trying to force them against the first chamber just makes you play the game entirely differently, so I'll assume that if you go for that, you already know what you're doing. So because of this, second chamber is pretty much just Overload and Burning. Overload is the most accessible, as there are plenty of options for Overload teams, and the only requirement really is the 4-star Chevreuse, who has the added bonus of being very effective against the first chamber boss with her burst. The only catch to using Overload is that Overload teams alone aren't enough to break the Abyss shields. You do need some Natlan in your team to be able to consistently get through the Papilla shield in time, but fortunately though, there are plenty of options for this, and one of them is free. Moika, Vereza, Ororon, and the Pyro Traveler are all great choices for this. As for burning, you can definitely run a generic burning team with old units like Shangling and Nahida, but you'll find it to be much weaker than using modern teams with Kanichi and Emily that they want you to use. If you don't have Kanichi or Emily and do have access to a good overload team with Salt Night Soul, generally the overload would be preferred. But if you do have Kanichi or Emily, burning slams through every single mechanic on this half, and you can make use of the Leyline disorder very well on top of that, so it's definitely the strongest choice here. As for the first half, it's genuinely so simple that it's hard to give advice for. It's pretty difficult to find a cohesive team that is not good on this half. It's just a bunch of generic enemies with a few bells and whistles here and there, and one of the simplest bosses in the game. Generally, you can just use any leftover strong team you have after building a second half team, and you should be more than set. Escoffier is the only character to use the Leyline buff, so she's literally the only team that has a leg up on others, though really it's more like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 legs. Farina Escoffier can literally duo this Abyss with 2 random Cryo/Hydro with them. I'm sure you probably noticed in the background footage I was clearing with ease using Eula. Don't get it twisted though, this is not Eula doing anything. As much as I want to feed my delusions that Eula is good, nah, it's literally just Escoffier and Farina. Which is actually a great segue into my disclaimer of the month. It's quite obvious how hard they are pandering to Escoffier and Kanichi, and pulling one of them will absolutely make your Abyss experience easier this month. But before you waste gems on a character you don't like, don't forget to consider how many gems you will earn from max clearing Abyss versus how much it costs for a 5-star. Well, in the case of Escoffier, there could be some merit to pulling, even if you don't like her, because if you like other Cryo and Hydro, and you want to make them as strong as possible, Escoffier is definitely super good for that, but that's a topic for another video. For now though, don't stress too much over Abyss, and just pull who you like. But yeah, that about covers the Abyss for this month. If you have any further questions for your exact situation, or if you think I left out anything important, make sure to drop a comment below. And of course, if this video was helpful, don't forget to leave a like, share the video, and sub for more. I will see you all in the next one. Later.